Okay, so today we are beginning with chapter 4 of I Survived the Destruction of Pompeii. If you remember from our reading yesterday, a couple of key things that we learned were that Marcus and his father are runaway slaves. We also learned that his father has taught him that when there are mysterious things happening that they don't have the answers for, it's better to look at those problems or those mysteries scientifically instead of simply blaming it on things like monsters or beasts or the gods being angry. And then lastly, the chapter closes with a beggar woman who is talking with Marcus, and she gives him sort of a strange message when the ground starts trembling, and she reminds him that when there's trouble, he should follow the hand of Mercury. Okay, so we'll pick up here on chapter 4. Marcus had barely blinked, and the woman was gone, swallowed by the crowd. He felt a stab of fear as he thought of what she had said. Was she a witch who could predict the future? A priestess who could hear the whispers of gods? Marcus thought again of his father. Tata would know what was happening here. A wave of sadness crashed over him. If only Tata were with him now. He could picture his father so clearly, his gentle blue eyes glinting through a mop of golden hair. Tata was born in Germania, a kingdom just beyond the northern boundaries of this vast Roman Empire. When Tata was just 10 years old, Roman soldiers had invaded his village. Marcus's father was soon captured, sold to slave traders, and marched hundreds of miles in chains to the empire's capital city of Rome. But Tata was lucky. He was bought by a kind man, a writer and scientist named Linus Cellius. He taught Tata to read and write in Latin, the language of the empire. He took Tata on research trips to faraway lands, teaching him all that he knew about the natural world. Soon Tata was helping Linus research his books and coming up with theories of his own. The years passed. Tata married Marcus's mother, who died when Marcus was just a baby. Marcus grew up helping Tata in Linus's library, one of the finest in Rome. Tata was always trying to get Marcus interested in studying nature, reading him his latest theories and dragging him on long walks through the hills above Rome. But it was the ancient Greek stories written centuries before that Marcus loved most, especially the tales of great heroes like Odysseus and Hercules. How Marcus had loved his happy life with Tata. But then 2 months ago, Linus Cellius had died in a fever that swept through Rome. In a blink, Marcus's entire world crumbled. Marcus and Tata became the property of Linus's nephew, the brutal Festus Julius. Linus himself had always despised Festus. The nephew wasted no time destroying his uncle's happy home. Within 2 days, Tata was sold. Marcus was loaded onto a donkey cart and brought here to Pompeii, a 2-day trip from Rome. He was now one of 10 slaves working endless days in Festus's enormous villa, one of the grandest homes in Pompeii. Where was Tata? He could be anywhere in the vast Roman Empire by now, from the rocky cliffs of Britannia to the deserts of Africa. His thoughts carried Marcus far away until a blaring trumpet yanked him back. "It's the gladiator parade," an old man cried out with excitement. "It's the fighters who will appear tomorrow." People jammed the sidewalks so Marcus could not get through. Now he had no choice but to put down the laundry sack and wait. 2 men on white horses led the parade, their riders waving bright flags. A band of horn players followed, and then acrobats and jugglers, and finally a stout man with a leering smile. He was the lanista, the owner of these gladiators. The lanista waved at the crowd, proud as an emperor. Owning gladiators was a dirty business. No respectable person would do it, but the lanista had grown rich on the blood of his gladiators, and he held his head high. Here you see the parade for the gladiators. People are waving with excitement. And then there was Cyclops, led by 2 young women in bright robes who were throwing rose petals. "There he is," a woman cried in the crowd, pointing at the muscled brute. The champion wore a gleaming bronze helmet. His massive shield matched the armor strapped to his bulging legs and arms. A leather pouch hid his blind eye. Scars covered his face. Marcus had heard terrifying stories about this man, that he had jaws like a tiger's, that his battle cry was like a panther's scream, that he could snap a man's neck with one hand. The crowd cheered and hooted as Cyclops passed. But people stood silently as the next four men walked by. These were the wretched souls who would be thrown into the arena with Cyclops tomorrow. None of them had a chance against Cyclops. By tomorrow afternoon, they'd all be dead. Marcus couldn't bear to watch them. But then he caught sight of the last man in line. Marcus froze, staring. The man was tall, with golden hair streaming out of his bronze helmet. He walked slowly, with dignity. A guard followed him, jabbing him in the back with a spear to move him along. The man turned his head. The sun lit up his proud face and his glinting blue eyes. Could it be? The pounding in Marcus's heart told the answer. And then suddenly, Marcus was running wildly into the street. "Tata!" Marcus screamed. Chapter 5. Tata froze and looked up, searching the crowd frantically with his eyes. The guards screamed at him, "Move! Move now!" At last Tata spotted Marcus. He dropped his shield and ran toward him. Seconds later, Marcus was in Tata's arms. "It's not possible," Tata whispered, hugging him so tightly that Marcus could hardly breathe. "How did you get here?" "Festus brought me here after you were sold," Marcus said, barely able to choke out the words. "But Tata, how? Why?" Not even in Marcus's nightmares could he have imagined anything worse than this. Festus had sold Tata to the gladiators. Marcus buried his face in Tata's chest, breathing in his familiar smell. Every day, every hour, Marcus had wished for this moment, and for a few seconds he let himself believe that they were really back together, that his prayers had been answered. But of course, the opposite was true. Two guards grabbed Tata's arms, tearing him away from Marcus. And then the lanista appeared. "What's this?" he spat. "How dare you stop my parade?" The musicians were silent, the jugglers and acrobats still. All eyes were on Tata and Marcus. "Have mercy," Tata said, struggling in the guard's grip. "This is my son." The lanista stared at Marcus, his cold, fishy eyes looking him up and down. "Maybe you'd like to join your father in the arena," he sneered. And then the lanista looked to the crowd. "What do you think?" he bellowed. "A father and son against Cyclops?" A few people shouted, "Bring him! Yes! What a show it will be!" "Or maybe you should fight each other," the lanista said, rubbing his hands together. "Run from here, Marcus," his father cried. "Go." But instead, Marcus grabbed the lanista's arm. "I beg you, please let my father go." The man ripped his arm away and snatched a spear from one of the guards. He pointed the blade at Marcus's eyes. "Ever wonder how Cyclops lost his eye?" he taunted, laughing at Marcus. "No," Tata shouted. Marcus staggered back. He lost his balance and fell, smacking his head on the stone curb. His head exploded in pain. He struggled to sit up, and through the blur, he could see Tata being dragged away, the guards jabbing him with spears. The lanista's wicked cackle rose up over the merry music. As Tata disappeared, all of the strength drained from Marcus's body. These past 2 months, he'd always had the hope that he and Tata would be together again. And that speck of hope, a tiny glowing ember, had been everything to him. But now, Marcus lay back in the gutter, closing his eyes. How would he go on? In his mind, he pictured Festus's face, heard his barking orders. He imagined the slaves who'd been working in the villa for years. Their bodies were crooked and scarred, their eyes dead like statues. And then Marcus thought of heroes from his favorite stories. They had desperate moments too. Odysseus, who was lost at sea for 10 years on his way home from Troy. Hercules, pinned down by a bloodthirsty lion. Those courageous men knew terror and hopelessness, as Marcus did now. But their stories hadn't ended with fear and defeat. Marcus's eyes snapped open. He sat up and struggled to his feet. He understood. He would try to save Tata, even if it killed him. Chapter 6. Marcus went to the fountain and splashed cool water on his face. He didn't have much time. Soon the parade would reach the gladiator barracks, and Tata would be locked away. The barracks was like a prison, with high stone walls and a towering iron gate. Marcus had heard that the fighters were locked in dark cells, their arms and legs shackled until it was time to fight. Once Tata was in the barracks, it would be too late. Somehow, Marcus had to steal Tata away from the parade. But how? He searched his mind for ages. Again, he thought of Odysseus. Odysseus wasn't the strongest man, but he was cunning. There had come a low point in the Trojan War when the Greek armies had Troy surrounded, but they could not break through the massive wall that encircled the city. Thousands of Trojan archers guarded the wall, ready to fire down on anyone who came too close. Some Greek generals were ready to give up on invading the city of Troy, but not Odysseus. He came up with the ingenious idea of building a giant wooden horse with a hollow belly. He and his best Greek soldiers hid inside the horse. They made the Trojans believe that the wooden animal was an offering from the gods, and tricked them into bringing it inside their walls. And then, attack. In the dead of the night, Odysseus and the hidden soldiers snuck out of the horse and opened the gates. The Greek soldiers smashed the Trojan army and conquered the city. Marcus searched around. All he saw was the laundry bag lying where he had dropped it. But wait, the idea flashed into Marcus's mind, and before he could talk himself out of it, he had ripped the sack open and was rummaging through Festus's clothes. He grabbed a toga, a robe woven from the finest wool and edged with purple ribbon. Marcus couldn't build himself a wooden horse, but he could hide in Festus's toga, disguise himself as an important Roman citizen. Marcus threw it around himself, covering his old tunic. The toga stank like rotten food, old wine, and Festus's sweat. Marcus fought back his nausea as he wrapped the endless stretch of fabric around his body, finally draping the loose end over his shoulder. He straightened his shoulders. The toga dragged on the ground a bit, but it would do. Marcus spat into his hands and flattened his hair to his forehead, the style of a rich son of Rome. Now he just needed a weapon, something to scare the guards so he and Tata could escape. Once again, the answer was right in front of him, on the sidewalk, the snake charmer. Somehow the old man was still dozing with the basket at his feet. Marcus crept up, kneeled, and snatched the basket. The old man was awake in a flash, hollering after him. Stop him! Stop that thief! Marcus darted through the crowd, one hand firmly on the lid of the basket. He was terrified that the lid would fly off and the cobra would spring out and sink its fangs into Marcus's neck. He could feel the snake hissing ferociously, banging its body against the sides of the flimsy basket. Marcus's heart pounded, his legs wobbled, his mind swirled with fear, but somehow he kept himself moving until he caught up with the parade. The music had stopped, and the lanista was unlocking the gates of the gladiator barracks. Marcus was almost out of time, and he would have just one chance.